And we are back with another I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. And we have some breaking news here. As you can see from Drew's background, a big purchase. A Dylan Windler jersey. Drew, man, tell us about this new jersey.
Hey, I mean, sometimes I say I'm from the future, and people don't believe me, and I'm just making sure everybody knows that I was the first one to call Dylan Windler at 26. I said if it happened, I needed a new jersey. It happened. I finally got around to making the purchase. Everybody's got a price. And I found a good price for this online. There's not a whole lot of Dylan Windler jerseys being sold right now, believe it or not. I know, I'm shocked as well as all of you. We may be a touch, and I mean a touch early on Dylan Windler being the greatest NBA player of all time here on the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast, but we will make sure everyone knows that you heard it here first. Dylan Windler, Cleveland Cavaliers, and he's going to be great. So a bet is a bet, and hence the new Dylan Windler jersey that you see over my right shoulder here. A staple of the podcast to come.
Officially licensed jerseys. That's all I'll say right there.
That is correct.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some Browns here. There's been a number of different articles. The national media has really been focusing on the Browns. There's been GQ articles, SI articles. Baker's been saying stuff. OBJ's been saying stuff. But the thing that I've been paying attention to, I don't know if this is just a rallying cry, but yes, there's a battle between the Browns and Giants, but also this idea that Cleveland is a wasteland. This idea that Jarvis Landry was traded to the Browns because Miami didn't want him anymore, and let's spite him. And the Giants didn't want OBJ anymore, didn't want his big salary. Let's trade him to the Browns. That would be the worst place to go in the league. Is this true, Eric? What do you think about the budding rivalry with the Giants? And obviously, we're not going to be a wasteland this year.
Well, of course not. I think the team who plays in New Jersey is going to be the wasteland. Maybe two teams from New Jersey, but that's another story for another day. We'll start with Odell Beckham Jr. Yeah, I mean, if this is something that he does to fire himself up, I think he's hopefully made his peace. He wasn't wanted, or allegedly wasn't wanted, and it's time to move on. If this fuels him to drive him to play harder, play better, even though I don't know how much more better or harder he could play, great. I don't think it's necessary, but hey, bridges were burned, and he's upset by it. So I'm okay with it. I'm not one of the guys that say, oh, he's got to get over it. Again, whatever, like you look at Michael Jordan and how he would take anything, or Tiger Woods, anything, small, insignificant slights. I remember having a podcast last year with Tom Brady saying we were half a point underdogs against the Chiefs. How nobody rooting for us, or everybody's against us. I don't care what it takes. If that's what is Odell's gonna need for this, great. I'm all for that. Having said that, on the other side of the coin, looking at Baker Mayfield's comments about Daniel Jones being surprised with the 6th pick, a lot of people are taking that as a slight. Yeah, he was surprised. I was surprised too. I was sitting right here in my basement thinking they were going to go Dwayne Haskins, Ed Oliver, Devin Bush. There was a handful of guys that I figured they would go. Maybe they would get a quarterback second. I didn't think Jones is the second best quarterback. So I was surprised too. The next quote that Baker said was that he was surprised he was taken first overall. I was surprised too. I thought they were going to go with Sam Darnold. But you know what? Sometimes you're surprised for the better. Sometimes you're surprised for the worse. Denzel Ward, I was surprised they took him at number 4. It looks like he's going to be a good pick. I was also surprised they took Brandon Whedon. Not a good pick. So, those things happen. And if, I think, New York has this way about them where they think they're better than everybody else. So if this is Cleveland's response and say, hey, you're no better than us, and our 2-star athletes are doing it, more power to them. Hopefully we take down the Jets this year and we play the Giants next year. So it's a good tandem by Baker and OBJ on this one.
Yeah. There's only one quarterback who's going to be on straight up Steve Austin this year, and that's Baker Mayfield. Drew, we talked a little bit about before we started. Do you think this is just a rallying cry? The Browns are, everyone, maybe the darling of the league. Wow, that's a crazy thing to say. Do you think this is to sort of get everyone back down to realistic expectations to say, oh, we were just a wasteland 2 years ago?
Um, I don't know if that was the intent of this. I was just talking about the Odell Beckham quote. Just what he said verbatim was, "This wasn't no business move. This was personal. They thought they'd send me here to die." That is the direct quote from the Sports Illustrated article from Odell Beckham Jr. But I don't think he's referring to the C in any way, shape, or form there. I think he's talking about the 1-31 Cleveland Browns who fired their head coach and their offensive coordinator in the middle of the season and tried to sort of scramble to, and succeeded, but had to scramble to put together anything resembling a decent staff, and they were able to sort of turn the year around towards the end. But if you think about over the last 3 years, this is a team that has had essentially one half of one season of anything resembling NFL caliber football. And so I think he's more referring to that the Browns organization, we're going to put whatever city you want to in it, that the Browns organization itself was so bad that this wasn't personal. They thought they were sending me to the worst franchise to die. But the joke's going to be on them. This franchise has everything that I'm looking for. This is now me sort of looking into it using the I'm from the future crystal ball type stuff. But, he's more so talking about how they got it wrong, that this isn't a place where wide receiver careers go to die anymore. This is a place that has one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, a good offensive-minded head coach, excellent weapons around the quarterback and around Odell, and an offensive line that is average or adequate at absolute worst. So I think he's more so getting into the fact that this was personal. The Giants thought they were getting one over on him, like when the Steelers thought they were getting one over on Antonio Brown by trading him to Oakland. As it turns out, Antonio Brown got paid, and Odell Beckham ends up in a much better situation. So, I think this was more so a way to say, yeah, this was personal. They thought they were sending me to a place that I didn't want to be, that my career would go to die. But, joke's on them. My career is going to be so much better because of this move.
Yeah, it's too bad Braylon Edwards didn't have. He was in the wasteland, and
no.
He would have been a great quarterback.
Had that New York essence about him. Braylon Edwards, when he got traded to the New Jersey Jets, he would often try to get his modeling career started. So Braylon Edwards fit right in New York City. You guys can have him. We will gladly take the quote unquote team cancer that you think Odell Beckham Jr. is, and we'll see who comes out ahead on those deals.
All right, let's a lot of juicy stories are out there. Something that might not have been as juicy was the Browns playing the Colts. Man, I was a little bit surprised watching that game. Not too many starters playing. A little tough to watch, even though we're trying to massage Garrett Gilbert and how exciting it is to see a former Baker Mayfield friend out there as quarterback for the Browns. He did look good, but I don't know. Let's go back to Drew here. Is this preseason? How watchable are some of these preseason games? Even though we're so excited for the Browns,
they're very unwatchable. Short answer there. It is very difficult to watch. To watch any of this, especially when you get past the first quarter, and there's guys out there that for certain are not going to be on an NFL roster. But if we're talking about this game specifically, I do want to talk about Garrett Gilbert, because there was a major question mark at backup quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And, God forbid, if something happens to Baker Mayfield, we're in trouble anyway. The question is, if Baker Mayfield has to miss a game or maybe 2 games because of maybe a concussion or something else that to any normal person would be a big deal, but to an NFL player is a quote unquote minor injury that sidelines you for maybe 2 games, maybe something like that. Do the Browns have a backup quarterback that can go in and that can compete and maybe beat some of the bad teams in the league? That's the question, right? If you have a backup quarterback that can get you to I don't want to say 500, but if Baker misses 2 games, maybe he wins one of those games. That was a big question, right? Because I don't think Drew Stanton can do that. I just don't. I don't think he had much talent ever, and I think the talent that he did have has long since evaded him or has long since gone away. So I was very excited to see Garrett Gilbert look like a competent NFL backup quarterback, which probably would have been a starter for the 2017 and 2016 and 17 Cleveland Browns, but old wounds. So I was very excited to see that. And the defense looked good. The linebackers looked pretty good. I think the defensive line, Larry Ogunjobi especially, had a couple really good plays. He drew, I think, 2 holding calls. Just was in the backfield all day long against a pretty good Colts offense. This is an offense that only allowed 18 sacks all of last year. Most of their starters were playing. And so, this was a really good showing for that defensive front and the linebackers. And I thought Garrett Gilbert looked pretty good. So, if you're looking for something to take from that game, certainly don't go back and watch it again. There's no reason to subject yourself to that. But, there were some positives in that. A, nobody got any real major injuries from it. And B, I think there's at least a reason not to panic if Baker Mayfield is out for a very short period of time.
Eric, what do you think about the possibility about Garrett Gilbert? And also, we'll lead into the Buccaneers here. What are you looking at for this upcoming Bucs game? And just how comfortable are you with Freddie Kitchens as a first-time NFL coach going up another Bruce Arians, new head coach of the Buccaneers? How are you feeling about Freddie commanding this team?
Well, first of all, let me look at last week and go forward for the next week. I was really rocking out my Orlando Apollos AAF jersey with Garrett Gilbert and Dearness Johnson doing a double team combination on.
You will not find that anywhere else. You will only find that here
against the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, there was a quick out for a touchdown to start the game. They look really well together. Maybe he could be the 3rd string running back. I'm not sure how Dontrell Hilliard. How is he going to factor in this offense? I liked a couple of the backups, Jalen Strong, DJ Montgomery. One of them might make the team. It's all about building depth. And, that's pretty much all I got to say about the Colts game. David Blau, I mean, he had one good game in college, beat Ohio State, but I don't think he's making this team. Maybe he'll make a team. That being said, now we got the dress rehearsal this Friday. The Browns are going up against a pretty solid head coach and Bruce Arians, as you had mentioned. I kind of like what Freddie's doing. He's not the only coach. You look at Matt Nagy, you look at Sean McVay as 2 guys who aren't really playing a ton of their starters, and I'm okay with that. It's one thing if your starters aren't very good or established, and you need them to get that work. But the Browns have a fair amount of guys who are established. There are young guys, but you could take a look at Baker and say he's only has 13 and a half games experience, but he's shown. I remember watching the Giants game last year, preseason. He's looked like a quarterback I've never seen for the Cleveland Browns, the way his ball is coming off his hand. So looking at that, I don't think he needs to play all that much. What I'm hoping for is probably about a quarter or so for both sides of the ball. If both sides of the ball have 2 outstanding series, that's probably good enough in my book. And, I kind of like to just see just that depth building. Is our second team going to be able to play their first team, provided the first team's still on the field? I think it's been odd that the Browns have been traveling to Tampa Bay. I think 2 of the last 3 years in preseason games. I don't know if they're doing it because they really want to work in that heat and try to make them more, accustomed to playing in adverse situations, even though they might not be one of the best teams. But however, that's the reason it's unique. But if that helps the Browns get in shape, great. And one other thing I forgot to mention is Jannard Avery's been practicing this week, and there's a spot for him on this defense. He's leaning more towards defensive line. I'd like to see him, if he's the third defensive lineman after Vernon and Garrett, then great. I'd like to see him. I haven't seen him since last year. He looked good as a rookie, but hopefully this year's fifth rounder and last year's fifth rounder could make a big contribution on the Browns starting defense.
Drew, how you feeling about Freddie? And you gonna watch this game?
I am going to watch this one. I watched the last one, so I'm certainly going to watch one where the starters play. Yeah, you asked the question to Eric. How do you feel about Freddie Kitchens versus Bruce Arians? And if that's the question, I would rather have Bruce Arians. I'd rather have the guy that has some experience. I'd rather have the guy that I've seen him introduce a new offense and have that be very successful. Of course, I'm referring to his time in Arizona now. Now, he had veteran quarterbacks, totally different type of situation. He had more of a veteran roster. I think he had one of the older teams in the league then when he became the head coach. And, the Browns are the youngest roster in the league. So, I don't know exactly how that would gel. And maybe that's the reason they went with Freddie Kitchens, who's younger, who can maybe relate to some of those players. It being his first time, their first time, they can sort of share that together. But, if that's the question, I think Tampa Bay got the best first-year head coach. I think Bruce Arians is a really good head coach, and I'm excited to see, what they do. I don't know if Jameis is the long-term answer, but if he is, I think Bruce Arians will get the most out of him. So I'm excited to see that. The Buccaneers had a pretty explosive passing game in 2018. The offensive coordinator is now the offensive coordinator of the Browns, so that's an excellent Todd Monken. That's an excellent sign. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much he knows that personnel and seeing what the defense does with that sort of in-house knowledge. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this offense might look like. There'll be a little bit of game planning for this. They might script out the first series. They might approach this like an actual game. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I hope that the starters play even in a series after halftime. I really do. I think it's important to be able to be coached to not just shut it down at the half. You have to be able to maintain your focus. You have to be able to keep that together so that you can go out there and know what it's like and get that type of experience, because you're obviously not doing that in the fourth quarter. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope that is what they do. I hope that's the approach that they take. Eric, you lost a light. That's okay. I'm going to keep going here. But yeah, I mean that's what I'm looking forward to. This is just high quality podcast stuff right here. Pay no attention
Having
to
a
the man
power
behind
outage
the over here.
Power outage. Technical difficulties aside, Eric has light again, and now
I've seen the light.
We're ready for the final promo, and we're going to touch on some Indians, as they are probably the most important team. Well, it's debatable as far as importance, but the team that's about to get into the playoffs here, if they can battle off the Twins. And our question this week, there's been some news with Kluber, ab injury, Salazar, he had a groin injury. Carrasco has had some good news. He had a standing ovation pitching for the Rubber Ducks there in Canton, or in Akron. I'm sorry there. So some news. I don't know if we're like gung ho on all of those guys making the rotation that's going to go into the playoff lineup or down the stretch lineup as far as the pitching rotation goes. My question after all that is, why are the Indians going to make the playoffs without those three, Salazar, Kluber, Carrasco? Maybe we can't rely on them. Why are they still going to make it? And we'll pick Eric this time first. Eric, why?
All right. Well, like I said, I've seen the light and I'm ready to go. It's kind of sad to see a lot of these guys from 2013 to 2016 who were big name starters who were definitely not nearly as important as they once were, and that's including Trevor Bauer to that list. So
why you gotta do that, man? Why you gotta do that?
Because it was there for the taking. It's the next batch. It's like the equivalent of Russell Wilson's defense getting reformed and, putting in new guys, getting rid of the old guys. So guys like Adam Plucko and Aaron Seaval are got to step up. I mean, obviously we have the top three that we've been referencing multiple times this year. So those three plus the two I'd mentioned, I mean, if the other three don't, come back this season, which it's not looking great, maybe Carrasco can do something for the team, then I think the Indians can still make the playoffs because they have a weak schedule that they play. They play the AL Central. The White Sox, the Royals, and the Tigers are three of the worst teams in baseball. The problem is that the Twins are also in the AL Central, and they will be playing those same three horrific teams, and they have a 2-game lead. And I know the Indians have a couple more difficult opponents the rest of the way. So I can see the Indians making the playoffs, but as a wild card. Looking at the teams that they're going up against, Oakland, Texas, Boston, and Tampa Bay are the four main teams. I think they're better than all of them. Boston has a better lineup, but Chris Sale's been shut down. I don't know indefinitely. I don't know if it's for the year. I don't really trust their pitching staff, so I think they should be able to be ahead of all four of those teams. Tampa Bay's really hit and miss. And they've beaten Texas pretty good. And Oakland, they haven't played in forever, but I can't name one player on their team, so the Indians have to be better than them. So, it's not going to take a Herculean effort, but they still have to play well to make the playoffs. But I still think they should be able to. With the ever since this trade, they've had a new team with Puig and even Franmil. He's starting to slowly come on. It helps playing in Yankee Stadium, but I think these young guys are really going to help carry the torch for this team this year, and I can't wait to find them on the playoffs 2019.
Talk about Herculean efforts. But Trevor Bauer, 11 strikeouts for the Reds in a losing performance. Drew, how can we do it without Bauer? Can you?
Why you guys gotta be like that? Like what did I do to you that made you like all I'm doing? Like he walks off the podcast, he just leaves, and you hit me with that. Like it's my fault.
Those 5 or 6 no light references might have been a fact.
All right, so how can we make the playoffs without Danny Salazar? Well, because Danny Salazar is not pitching, and that guy, if he never sees a mound again for the Cleveland Indians, I'm just fine. So how can we make it without Carrasco and without Kluber? Well, it's no walk in the park, but they do have a 1-game lead on the Rays and for the top wild card spot, and they're 2.5 ahead of Oakland for the second spot. So I think it's possible that they can hold on to that spot even without Carrasco and Kluber. One of the reasons why is going to be Mike Clevenger. His velocity in 2017, most of 2018 was around 91, 92, and his velocity, thanks to Trevor Bauer, is up now to about 98 and even 99. He's hitting as a starting pitcher. This isn't just his first pitch either. This is deeper into games. He is throwing more. He said on Twitter, he's throwing more with his lower body and less with just his arm. So Mike Clevenger, I think, is a big reason why, as your second or third best pitcher on the staff, I think he can do a lot. And just hear me out on this one, sports fans. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for this team to end up as a wild card team. I think that I would rather play the Yankees than the Astros. I would always rather avoid the team with the better pitching. And I think without question right now, Houston has a better staff, has a better pitching, just overall staff, top to bottom, that includes bullpen, than the Yankees do. The Indians went into New York and took, split there, and they scored like 30 runs in the first game or something absurd like that. So the Yankees have a 3-game lead on Houston for the number 1 seed in the American League. And, if you play as a wild card, you obviously have a 1-game playoff that you have to win. That's no, I'm not diminishing that, right? That's no fun. But if you can do that and you can win that 1 game, I think that this team matches up a little better against the Yankees than it does against a dominant pitching staff in Houston. I would rather take our pitching staff against the Yankees bats than try to match up strength on strength against Houston and their staff. I think that is going to be a harder series for our Indians to win 3 out of 5 games on.
All right, enjoy it while we can. Maybe Francisco Lindor isn't going to be here forever. But let's get a playoff run here. Let's watch these Tribe players, and let's get into the playoffs. Let's face the Yankees. Let's have a chance here. Well, thank you guys. We'll be tuning in to a lot of awesome games coming up here, and more awesome games to come with the start of NFL regular season, NCAA regular season, and the MLB playoffs. We'll be tuning in, and we'll be talking about it. Thanks, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Have a nice day.
Take care.